Let's tank the fallen avatar in the Tomb of Sargeras on normal and heroic difficulty. Now this fight is a two-phase fight, with the majority being spent in phase 1, and learning and mastering phase 1 is the key to beating this fight, as phase 2 is pretty much a burn with like 2 mechanics to deal with, whereas phase 1's got all the mechanics, all the positioning, and a lot of the mechanics that will kill off raid members so you don't meet the DPS check on this fight. So let's have a look at phase 1. So we decided to bloodlust in phase 1 as to push the boss as low as possible, so that we didn't have to worry about doing too much damage in the last phase, and we could also sacrifice DPS in the last phase if we needed to when they get the wins, which we'll go over later. However, it's up to you how you want to do this. Some guilds may want to use execute classes or have more execute classes than we did, so lusting in the second phase might be a bigger option, but a lot of guilds we found actually lusted in phase 1. So throughout the fight, the main tank ability you're going to be getting is called Desolate. And what this is going to do is it's going to inflict 4 million physical damage and increase damage taken from Desolate by 50% for 30 seconds. This affects stacks, and all you want to do with this ability is taunt swap on 2 stacks. This will mean the debuff will drop, and when you do the taunt swap, you're going to taunt onto Maiden and Avatar, so you're swapping between the 2 bosses. And there's not really much more to go over on this ability. It's a really simple thing. You may want to use a defensive cooldown for the second application, but you shouldn't really need to. If you go into 3 or 4 stacks, however, because a tank dies and you're waiting for a battle res, really consider using externals and your bigger cooldowns. Now the next ability is called Unbound Chaos. And what this is going to do is every half a second, the target marks their current location. And after 1.5 seconds, the marked location explodes, inflicting 1.1 million chaos damage to all players within 5 yards. In addition, the target erupts with chaos flames, causing them to suffer 131,000 chaos damage every half second for 4 seconds. So basically for this, you want people to be moving, and you also need to be aware of people moving over you as a tank, because this does add up to damage, especially if you're tanking Avatar. I just want to try to move out of it. It can be a bit of a pain, and you kind of need to assign people sometimes where to move to. For this kill, our group decided to split the melee up, one half on the left, one half to the right, and the people with this would run to the walls, and everyone else would go inwards. If you do feel like you're going to get hit by multiple of these, then you may want to consider using offensive cooldown just to help you survive it, as it does hurt really hard, and sometimes people can really fuck this mechanic up, so just be wary of it. Now Avatar's next ability is called Rupture Realities, and what this is going to do is the fallen Avatar unleashes a blast of fell energy, inflicting 9.2 million fire damage to all players. Players further away from Avatar take less damage. So basically, the boss will make the whole green light glow like a greeny colour, and it looks like he's drawing in energy. When he starts doing this, you need to run out as far as possible, and then as soon as it explodes, you need to run back in. You need to get to the boss as quick as possible, because of an ability does called Ripple of Darkness, and this is going to inflict 500,000 shadow damage to all enemies, and he only does this if there's not somebody actively engaged in melee combat with him. So it's important after Ruptured Reality that you get back to the boss straight away. You do have a few seconds to do this, however, so don't worry about it too much. Now Avatar's next ability is called Shadowy Blades, and what this is going to do is Avatar's going to summon 3 blades that speed towards random targets. Each player hit by a blade creates a pool of lingering darkness and causing an explosion, inflicting 1.5 million shadow damage to the target and all players within 7 yards. So what you want to be doing for this ability is having people go to the outsides with them. If they can't, however, get to the outside, they want to be putting these in a smart spot. And by smart spot, I mean if Maiden's in front of you, you want to go to the side of Maiden. If there's a big group of people in front of you, you want to go to the side of the big group of players. You don't want to move 10 players for the one of you. So just look at who's in front of you, or if you're at the sides of the room in a melee group, just go out to the side. Now you want to do this because every person hit's going to blow up, as well as leave a pool of crap on the floor. This pool of crap can get really problematic if it's the melee players, and it's near where you need to tank Maiden, especially when Maiden gets a shield, which we'll go over a little bit later on. Now, if you play without it, you can be smart and look at where the blade's facing and just not be in the line the blade's facing. One will spawn right in the center of Avatar, and the other 2 will spawn just a few yards to either side of the center one. So you can see all 3 very easily. It just takes a few pulls to get used to it. So just use your noggin a little bit and just make sure you're not getting hit by any of the blades, because the pulls can be really problematic later on in the fight, especially when you need to DPS down Maiden. And the final ability Avatar's going to do in this phase is called Touch of Sargeras. So what this is going to do, it's going to create 3 shadowy fissures, which are basically 3 purple circles on the ground. Each one's going to erupt after 8 seconds, inflicting 4.5 million shadow damage to all players in the fissure divided evenly. Each of these fissures that is not absorbed inflicts 4.4 million shadow damage to all players instead. Now for this, you can handle these in multiple different ways. You can have people solo soak them with immunities, or you can just have people get into them. It's totally up to you guys how you handle it. We just had people get into them, and if they was going to immunity soak it, they'd just call it out. So now let's have a look at Maiden and her abilities in phase 1. Now Maiden won't appear in phase 2 at all. She only appears in phase 1, and when she dies, phase 2 activates, or upon the boss hitting 100 energy, that will also activate phase 2. There's going to be a few pylons around the room, as you'll see, and these are going to shoot beams to the boss. Now these beams will give the boss energy at a quick rate, and what you can do is put Maiden in the beams, and she'll then take the energy instead of the boss. Now upon reaching 100 energy, boss will activate phase 2. Upon reaching 100 energy from the Maiden, she'll gain an absorb shield, which needs to be DPS down. If it doesn't, it'll blow up on the raid and wipe the raid. So your aim is to put the beams onto Maiden, and each beam will then raise her energy instead of the boss's. At 100 energy, she gets a shield. You DPS the shield down, it blows up. It hits the Maiden for about 20 to 25% of her health, and then you get straight back onto Avatar. Now you may think that sounds pretty simple, but it definitely isn't. The abilities that Avatar does can make DPSing shield down quite problematic. The shadowy blades can get put through you, which will leave big patches on the ground on you, which means you're going to pretty much wipe the raid. And Unbound Chaos can overlap with DPSing the shield down, which means there's going to be a load of swirls on the ground. So people need to be running towards the walls or getting out as soon as possible. But all this means that there's going to be less damage going on to Maiden. So you may want to think about using DPS cooldowns for certain ones. It just depends on where your guild's DPS lies and if you're even going to get any overlaps. For the most part, we just got an Unbound Chaos overlap, but I have seen it where Shadowy Blades overlap happens as well. And apart from that, there's not too much to Maiden. You just need to make sure you get the shield down, you get her onto the pylons as soon as possible, and the beam never really hits the boss. If you get this right, you should get 5 soaks with Maiden, and after the 5th soak, phase 2 will happen, where the floor will shatter, and Avatar gains his legs. So phase 2 is all about getting the boss down before all the platforms get destroyed. They get destroyed by the ability Rupture Reality. And in phase 2, Rupture Reality is going to inflict 9.2 million fire damage to all players and shatter the ground below him. Again, the further you are away from the boss, the less damage you're going to take, so you want to pull him to one of the corners of the room, and he's going to pretty much shatter most of the room by doing this and leave you a path around the outside. And you're just going to keep him in the corners. So you pretty much get 4 to 5 platforms worth of damage before it's a raid wipe and there's no floor to stand on and you're standing in lava. Now, there's only a few abilities to worry about in this phase now. Most of them have gone away. The first one's called Dark Mark, and what this is going to do, it's going to brand several players with a purple circle around them, and after 6 seconds, it's going to inflict 6.6 million shadow damage, dividing evenly to all players within 8 yards of the target, and knocks them into the air. Now, the knockback depends on where you're standing, so if you stand in front of the player, you're going to get knocked forward. To the left, you're going to get knocked left, right, and backwards, so on and so forth. So you need to make sure you stood in a position where you're not going to get punted into the lava, especially when you haven't got a lot of room left to move. Apart from that, you need to pretty much make sure everyone's soaking, because 6.6 million shadow damage split is a lot of people to only be taking a slight amount of damage. You want to have at least 5 people in it, so they're taking 1 million damage each. But again, you can use immunity soaks on these players. Say a mage gets it, they can just stand off to the side and use an ice block. Once again, Desolate happens and you just want to taunt swap on 2 again, but it shouldn't really matter if you get 3 or even 4 stacks in this phase. You should be alright holding the boss for quite a while, especially if the other tank dies. The boss doesn't melee swing too hard, so don't worry about this ability too much. Just make sure you're doing the normal taunt swap rotation if both tanks are alive. Now, another ability the boss will be doing throughout this fight is a lot of raid-wide damage through Sear, and all this does is it's going to pulse 225k fire damage to all players every 2 seconds, and every time the floor breaks, he's going to be stood in the lava, which also increases damage done. And this is because of Fel Infusion, and all this says is, while the fallen avatar stands in lava, the damage of Sear is permanently increased by 15% every 2.5 seconds that he stands in the lava. So just be aware that the longer the fight goes and the more times the floor breaks, that this Sear ability is going to be hitting your raid harder and harder. So near the end of the fight, you won't be thinking about using raid-wide cooldowns just to help with this damage a bit. And the final ability the boss will be doing throughout this phase is called Black Winds, and this ability is pretty much what's going to be killing off a lot of your players, as well as Sear. Because of the damage together, the Black Winds will be putting a debuff on players, which ticks for a hell of a lot of damage, and it does stack. So what Black Winds does is he's going to summon forth chaotic storms of darkness that traverse the platform. Touching a storm inflicts 1.2 million shadow damage, an additional 500k shadow damage every 1.5 seconds for 12 seconds. So you're going to take a hit off the wind when it first hits you. It's going to leave a nasty dot on you. So you want to be dodging these winds as best as possible. This is pretty much your top priority in this phase, as well as soaking. Now, if you get all this down, the boss should fall over pretty easily. The damage requirement isn't too hard, so long as you keep everyone alive. If everyone stays alive, this boss will just drop. Once everyone learns how to do all the mechanics throughout the fight, the boss will literally fall over. It is just a mechanic fight. Anyway, guys, that's it for my Fallen Avatar Heroic and Normal guide. Hope this guide helps you get the kill. And KG should be coming within the next week, hopefully, as long as everything goes to plan. I know my videos don't come out perfectly, but I do try to get them all out at some point or another, even if I am a bit behind. Good luck on your kill, and I'll see you in my next video.